This is the Dutch Parliament in The Hague. There are 150 MPs, one of whom, my guest today, lives a life very different from all of the others. He has bodyguards. He lives in a series of safe houses. The reason? Well, he continues to wage what he's declared to be a jihad against Islam. He has an unerring eye for controversy, but is he winning the argument? Geert Wilders, welcome to Hardtalk.
Thank you.
You are still hugely controversial. You still have the security detail, you sleep in the safe houses, but do you worry that the Dutch people are no longer listening to you?
Well, I'm not really worried by that, to be honest. We have 9 seats in our parliament today, and if you look at the latest polls, we even get 50% more, like 14 seats out of the 150-seated parliament, so almost 10%. So I believe that there is a growing amount of people, at least in my country, that support our ideas, and I'm very happy with that.
But you thrive on controversy. You thrive on provoking extreme reaction. And if we look at the film that you made earlier this year, Fitna, which in essence took the Quran, took the words from the Quran and conflated them with images of jihadi terror, and seemed to suggest the message was Islam equals terror. And yet that film flopped. It roused very little reaction.
Yes. Well, first, my aim is not to invoke violence in any way. This is not the reason I made Fitna. I made Fitna to show indeed to the Dutch and the West society that Islam as such is a threat, is a violent, barbaric ideology. And that Fitna, indeed, the film was a success. I believe it was a success. In the Netherlands, after 2 hours, more than 3 million people watched it. Worldwide, more than 20 million people watched it.
So well, you don't know how they reacted to it. I mean, many people in the press described it as utterly predictable. The message that you've been delivering for years has not changed. And now, it seems, Muslims are choosing to ignore it rather than react to it.
Well, this is fortunately, or unfortunately maybe, I don't know, not the case. There was a lot of reactions to the film Fitna, both in the Netherlands and abroad. There was a parliamentary debate with our Prime Minister a few days after Fitna. There was a debate in our society. Could be more, I agree with that, but still there is. I get so many reactions also from abroad, 20 million people watched it, and my email box, more than 1,000 reactions a day. And
well, I'll tell you one reaction from abroad, a reaction of Mr. Vestergaard, the Danish cartoonist, whose image you reproduced in your film.
Yes.
That is the famous cartoon image of a depiction of Prophet Muhammad with a turban, a bomb on his head.
Yes.
Apparently an allusion to terrorism. Mr. Vestergaard asked you to take that cartoon image out of your film. You had not got permission to use it, and he said your ideas about Islam and the dangers of Islam were absolutely contrary to his own, and you had to take the image out.
And I did. I indeed made a mistake by using, without asking, his cartoon. On the other hand, I met him a few weeks ago in Denmark to discuss the matter, and even though he doesn't agree and he doesn't share my view on Islam, he's very much in favor of the freedom of speech, and he even said that if you would have asked me, I would have made, especially for you, perhaps a new cartoon that you could use in your film.
Well, he may agree with the freedom of speech, but it is quite embarrassing for you, Mr. Wilders, is it not, when he says Wilders has an overly generalized perception of Muslims as potential terrorists. It is not like that at all, he says. I know a lot of Muslims here in Denmark who accept democracy completely and who live their religion as a private matter.
But there, I'm sorry to disappoint you, I don't disagree with Mr. Westergaard. I don't believe that the majority of the Muslims are terrorists. I make a distinction between the people. I don't hate people. I acknowledge the fact that the majority of the Muslims are not terrorists, but I have a problem with the violent ideology that is called Islam.
Let me quote you the words of a prominent Jewish television producer here in Holland, Harry de Winter. He said, You can find many sentences in my Torah that are violently abusive of homosexuals, women, non-Jewish preachers. But if the film, a film similar to Fitna, had been made about Jews, it would have been universally condemned as anti-Semitic. And he's right,
I don't know. He's fully wrong. There are so many differences between, on one side, Christianity, Judaism, and on the other side, Muslim. The religious context.
You can find words in the Bible, in the Torah, which appear to be incitements to violence, which incite hatred against apostates, against unbelievers, and if you chose to thread them together, as you do with particular words from the Quran, you could characterize both of those other religions as committed to violence, hate, and even terror.
Well, I believe that is complete nonsense indeed. Look, for instance, at the Old Testament that you mentioned, Christianity. It was followed by a more moderate New Testament. There has not been any new Quran so far. And what are the problems today? Besides perhaps some incidents in Israel and other countries.
Well,
the majority of the terroristic and violent acts today, whether it is in London, whether it's in Madrid, in the streets of Amsterdam, or 9/11, is committed by people in the name of Islam, not by Buddhism or by Christianity or by Judaism.
But here we get to the question of interpretation and context and fairness. Let me just cite you one example. Yigal Amir, a Jew, a religious Jew who assassinated a Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, he said that he did it inspired and guided by words from Jewish holy text. That does not give you, me, or anybody else the right to say that Judaism is a religion committed to terror, does it?
It's not the contrary. Judaism...
But you do the same with Islam.
Christianity is part of our culture. And of course there are individuals like Yigal Amir who did the most terrible thing. But it's not in the same context. If you look at the Quran, where, if you saw after the destruction of the Second Temple in the Judaism, you also saw it in Christianity, I'll talk about the New Testament, that you saw a change of enlightenment, you saw a change of attitude. You don't see that in Islam. If you look at the Islam from 1400 years ago, when those people declared war on our societies and our culture, you see almost no change. Why? Because Islam and the Quran is believed as the word of God.
I feel your passion. I hear it.
Yes.
And I also sense an incredible certitude from you, a belief that you are right. There is not a shred of self-doubt in you. How can you reach that level of certitude about Islam, your belief that you know what Islam is? I look at your record. You've spent an awful lot of time in the Middle East, but actually almost all of it's been in Israel. You visited Israel.
That's not true.
Well, hang on. You visited Israel more than 40 times. You've lived in Israel. Have you lived in Turkey? Have you lived amongst Muslims, let's say in Michigan in the United States, or amongst Muslims actually in your own country in the Netherlands, Muslims who are moderate, law-abiding, peaceable people living in a democracy and accepting the rules of a democracy? There are hundreds of millions of Muslims who you have apparently no knowledge of.
I do. I visited not only more than you think Arab and Islamic countries, like I stated before, not only my friends, indeed, though ask my friends, I'm not ashamed to say that, of Israel. So, and I spoke to many people, from the clergy to the intellectuals to even journalists I spoke to. And I acknowledge once again the fact that in our societies there are a majority of the Muslims that are in fact not terrorists. But I know that if the amount of them will grow and if their culture will become more dominant, that it will change. And that the concept of taqiyya that they are stating now, by not really saying and showing often who they are, will change if they become stronger. And I'm not the first one. Maybe I want to emphasize one thing, because you said, how can you be so sure? I want to tell you one thing, because you are a British journalist. I remember reading a book called The River War by Winston Churchill. It was published in 1899, and Winston Churchill at that time said very clearly that Mohammedanism is a militant faith and we may lose our civilization in Europe. And unfortunately what I see today, that we have a total lack of political leadership. The leaders in Europe and in the European countries are not behaving like Churchill. They are behaving like Chamberlain, selling out with the enemy, which is Islam, selling out our culture, our identity. And I'm a politician that stands up and says, enough is enough. Islam is not part of our culture, should never be.